This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 4, Jesus Our Faithful Brother, ready for teaching on January 22. It's from the series In These Last Days, The Message of Hebrews, authored by Dr. Felix Cortes, Associate Professor of New Testament Literature in the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary at Andrews University. And I'm your reader for today, Dr. Percy Harrold. Wednesday, January 19. Perfected through sufferings. Read Hebrews 2, verses 10, 17 and 18, and Hebrews 5, verses 8 and 9. What was the function of suffering in Jesus' life? First of all, Hebrews 2, verse 10, for it was fitting for him, for whom are all things and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. And verses 17 and 18, therefore, in all things he had to be made like his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. And Hebrews 5, verses 8 and 9. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered, and having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him. The apostle says that God made Jesus perfect through sufferings. This expression is surprising. The author has said that Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God in the exact imprint of his nature in chapter 1, verse 3, and that he is sinless, spotless, undefiled, and holy in Hebrews 4, 15, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. And in chapter 7, verses 26 to 28, for such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and has become a higher than the heavens, who does not need daily, as those high priests, to offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the people's, for this he did once for all when he offered up himself. For the law appoints as high priests men who have weaknesses, but the word of the oath, which came after the law, appoints the Son who has been perfected forever. And Hebrews 9:14, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. And Hebrews 10, verses 5 to 10. Therefore, when he came into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin you had no pleasure. Then I said, behold, I have come. In the volume of the book it is written of me, to do your will, O God. Previously saying, sacrifice and offering, burnt offerings and offerings for sin, you did not desire, nor had pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law. Then he said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God. He takes away the first, that he may establish the second. By that will we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ, once for all. Jesus did not have to overcome any kind of moral or ethical imperfection. He was perfect both morally and ethically. Hebrews does say, however, that Jesus underwent a process of perfecting. That provided him with the means to save us. Jesus was perfected in the sense that he was equipped to be our Saviour. 1. Jesus was perfected through sufferings in order to become the captain of our salvation, as we've just read in Hebrews 2:10. Jesus had to die on the cross as a sacrifice so that the Father could have the legal means to save us. Jesus was the perfect sacrificial offering, the only one. As God, Jesus could judge us, but because of his sacrifice, Jesus also can save us. 2. Jesus learned obedience through sufferings, as we read in Hebrews 5:10. Obedience was necessary for two things. First, obedience made his sacrifice acceptable, as we've just read in Hebrews 9:14 and Hebrews 10:5-10. Second, his sufferings enabled him to become our example, as we read in Hebrews 5:9. Jesus learned obedience because he never experienced it before. As God, whom would he have to obey? As the eternal Son and one with God, he was obeyed as the ruler of the universe. Therefore, Jesus did not progress from disobedience to obedience, but from sovereignty and dominion to submission and obedience. The exalted Son of God became the obedient Son of Man. 3. Suffering temptation and being victorious enabled Jesus to be a merciful and faithful high priest, as we read in Hebrews 2:17 and 18. Sufferings did not make Jesus more merciful. To the contrary, it was because of Jesus' mercy that he volunteered to die on the cross to save us to begin with, as we read in Hebrews 10:5-10. And we're going to compare this with Romans chapter 5, verses 7 and 8. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love toward us in that, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Yet it was through sufferings that the reality of Jesus' brotherly love was truly expressed and revealed. And so to finish today, if the sinless Jesus suffered, we as sinners surely will suffer as well. How can we learn to endure the tragedies of life while at the same time drawing hope and assurance from the Lord, who has revealed his love to us in so many powerful ways? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.